Hello, Tea Family. Welcome. Hope everybody has had a great weekend. We are going to go ahead and get started. And so, welcome, Tea Family. If this is your first time here, please feel free to say hello in the comments or in the chat, depending on which platform you're using. And say hello, share what kind of tea you're drinking if you're drinking a tea, but just be aware. If you have questions throughout anything this evening as we're chatting live, please put them in the comments. I have a handy dandy assistant just over here.
Hi.
Who will be happy to let me know that there is a comment, because I don't always see everything because I'm trying to focus on you and what I'm doing in front of me. And yes, I've got some interesting things in front of me this evening. All right, so I always want to say hello and welcome, and then remind everybody how to chat and kind of what's going to go on. Today, we're doing things a little different. I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's no tea kettle right here. It's actually off camera. That's okay. Because we're not ready for that yet. Now the water has been boiled and it is all set, and it will remain nice and boiling hot, literally, because we're going to be making some appealing today. Now this is our fall blend. We love this blend. It is one that I need a package for, handy dandy assistant, because I thought of it several times. But we're going to be making some appealing today. You're going to see me use my hands to make this tea this time. That is not something I do when it is tea for you, but these are ingredients that are our personal ingredients. And so I will go ahead and touch them with my hands and not have the gloves on. My hands get really, really sweaty in those gloves. It's not fun at all. Not fun at all. But, so we are going to be making appealing today. All right. And this is our fall blend. It is only available September through November. That's it. September through November for appealing. It is Keemun black tea. It is cinnamon. And it is this right here. Now this is not just an apple. I know everybody's like, okay, it's an apple appealing, and it is a fall blend. But this is not just any kind of apple. And this particular apple has a story that goes behind it. So, let's get started. Diane's drinking hot chocolate tonight. I love hot chocolate. There's nothing like a good hot chocolate, so that's not a problem. We get it. Can't drink tea 24/7. Need water in there too. But, okay, so we are going to be making appealing. Now, in this pouch right here, and what went on sale September 1st, sorry, trying to like look at the camera, look at the screen, try and make sure y'all can see this. The apples in here have all been freeze dried by my handy dandy assistant and myself. And then they are processed into the tea from there. So we'll take the tea, we will get apples that look like this. And as I said, these are our personal stash. This is not stuff that you all will be able to drink. This is our personal stash. But this is an apple. It's been freeze dried. It's really crunchy. We'll slice it up, freeze dry it, and then we will literally just use it in the tea. Now, one of the things when we do this, why do we freeze dry it? Well, first of all, apples are really high in sugar. So we freeze dry it to remove the moisture so that we can have a shelf-stable apple blend for the tea that you won't have to use in a week or two. It gives it a stability of, I always like to say 3 to 6 months. We've had them for a year and they've been perfectly fine. But 3 to 6 months, because we're keeping there's moisture is gone out of the apple. That actually enhances the apple flavor. And then it also keeps it shelf stable for as long as it's not in oxygen. So, that's what you would get in here. Now, the apple in here is a specific kind of apple. And I know that you all have heard me talk about this before, but if you haven't, this apple right here is representative of this right here. Why? Because this is a McIntosh apple. Now, last year, my handy dandy assistant and myself went to New England to the orchard ourselves, and we grabbed and purchased McIntosh apples. So why am I choosing McIntosh apples? Out of all the apple varieties that are out there, why McIntosh? Well, first of all, we're from New England. Especially in New England, there's really only two kinds of apples. Okay, you can get them all, but one is McIntosh. That is the #1 apple in New England. And then second to that is Cortland, which is really close to a McIntosh. It'll do in a pinch, but it is by no means a McIntosh apple. And that's it. In my taste buds, when you say apple, the flavor of a McIntosh apple is what it is. Now, McIntosh apples, why do I like them other than that? There are a lot of apples out there. There's some that I love, and there's some that I'm like, because in my brain, apple equals McIntosh apple or a Cortland apple. So McIntosh apples are heirloom, #1. And that is an amazing thing because they are not a genetically modified type of variety. They have been here. Anybody want to guess? Okay, in the chat, go ahead and put what year you think that McIntosh apples were found, located, recognized, anything like that. Go ahead and put it in there. Put it in the chat. What year do you think that John McIntosh, who they are named after, chanced across the seedling of an actual McIntosh apple? So they're from prior to this, but when it was recognized as its own variety of apple.
1980.
1980 is not the correct answer. Anybody else want to take a guess? Anybody else want to take a guess? 1900 is not correct either. All right. I have a phone. People text. It's amazing. All right. The answer is 1811. This is apple. This particular a variety, or the variety of actual true McIntosh apples are from 1811. Is when John McIntosh, who it's named after, chanced along a seedling, is how it says, and he and he is the one that kind of came across it. He was not Johnny Appleseed. I don't know if he went with Johnny Appleseed or not, but I do know that the McIntosh apples are named after John McIntosh. So there's their trivia for tonight. For all of you that wanted that trivia piece, there you go.
Diane asked if John McIntosh ride with Justin Morgan. Horses like apples.
Horses do like apples. Okay, so a McIntosh, what is it like on a flavor profile? Well, if you think of the sweetest apple at the top and the most tart apple at the bottom, right where sweet meets tart is where you're going to find the McIntosh apple. So it is a sweet apple. It is a delicious apple, but it's going to have just touching the tart side, so it's not super overly sweet. It's kind of right there in the middle, and that's one of the reasons why it is fantastic. It's also one of the reasons why we like it for the tea. We don't want something that's super sweet in the tea. We want something that's going to have just a touch of that tang, a touch of that tartness to it to balance the smoky robustness of the Keemun that we use. And then, of course, what would it be with an apple tea without some cinnamon? We typically do get organic, non-GMO cinnamon sticks. They're from Indonesia, not Madagascar. These are actually from Indonesia, and they do a great job from a local co-op. That way we can guarantee that they are organic, non-GMO. So these are the 3 ingredients. That's it. Apples, cinnamon, and Keemun black tea. That's all you'll find in our peeling. So we're going to make some. Now, I'm not going to crush this down because my handy dandy assistant has already done that, as you can see. And there you go. So what you see here is the cinnamon. Oh my gosh, it smells so good in here. Right now, between the apple under my nose and opening the cinnamon, it is Thanksgiving apple pie season in my house. But as you can see, when we crush, we, being my handy dandy assistant, crushes the cinnamon down, we are trying to get it about the same size as our tea leaves. And why do we want to do that? Because that way they're not smaller. Like if we put cinnamon, ground cinnamon in here, first of all, it's not going to go through multiple brews. Second of all, it's going to fall to the bottom. When these two things are about the same size and weight, they will just mix with each other and kind of stay mixed. Nothing settles, and that's important to us. Now, then we have an apple. So before I can enjoy my tea today, I'm going to make a small batch. And right here in front of you, and then I will take from that batch and create my tea. All right. Didn't like that. It said it was uneven. Gosh. All right. Well, my handy dandy scale is not working as well as it could be today. So, all right, we are going to, oh, this is really not liking it today. I have to get the other scale. Oh, there we go. All right, now I'm setting this to grams. As you all know, grams are the choice when we're doing something like this because it's a much finer and smaller unit than ounces. Okay. So we're going to weigh the black tea first. And I typically will do it with 1/1000th of a gram. That's how precise we make it. So there's our Keemun. Always have a small mixing bowl. All right. Now, wow, that was almost exact. And here we are. Like that was almost exactly the right amount of cinnamon. And then the only thing left to add is our apple, but we're going to kind of put everything to a side for a second. And the reason for that is we need to chop our apple. Okay, so that apple I was showing you earlier, this apple right here. Like I said, last year, to get the apples for the peeling for this year, we were in New England. It was apple season, and we went ahead and we got 3 pecks of apples. And I am not using the right knife for this.
You want me to get the cheese?
Yes, if you could, that would be great. These might be just a little bit bigger than I would normally do. But we were there and we got the apples home. I'm trying not to crush them into dust. So I'm trying to cut without turning it into dust. And then we did a series of freeze drying for a couple of weeks. We would simply wash the apples, core the apples, and then slice them and freeze dry them right away. We did not treat them. You might notice there is a slight, now it's the detriment of having there might be a slight little bit of brownness to the apple, and the reason for that is that we do not, here we go, treat it with lemon juice or anything like that. A lot of places, okay, that's all I need. A lot of places will do that. The reason why they do that is they want, I'm actually going to hand this to him. If you will just go ahead and do that up really quickly. They want that so that it doesn't turn brown, so they have more time to work with the apple. We just work really, really quickly, and we know that if the apple browns slightly, it's not that big of a deal. It does not affect the flavor of the apple in the tea. We work in tiny batches, and we, as soon as the apples are done and sliced, we core them, we slice them, and then they immediately go into the freezer so that there's no oxidation or anything like that, and then they're prepped to go into the freeze dryer. We do that because we don't want lemon juice or ascorbic acid or anything else to stop the browning or vinegar, because if we use anything, even if it's a healthy choice, it's going to affect the tea. So we don't want to do that. That is one of the reasons why we don't do that. We freeze dry, we cut, we wash the apples, and then we'll core it and slice it and then immediately get it into the freezer out of the oxygen before it gets a chance to really turn brown. All right. And so around here, there we are. Thank you. Too many things over here for me to handle at the same time. Thank you. Okay, so normally we would put it in a jar, kind of like a quart jar. We would make little batches because we do everything handcrafted, but this is our own personal staff. Again, this is why I'm using my hands. I am making this for me today. My guess is my handy dandy assistant is going to steal some as well.
Yay.
I'm going to try and prevent that just because I'm greedy. I really love a peeling. We created a peeling because we really wanted a fall blend. And that's it. That's literally what it looks like when you get it. That is what a peeling looks like. Now, it is time to make some tea.
You have a favorite?
I do. I'm gonna make it a little stronger. This is way bigger than an 8-ounce cup, so we will go ahead and this is a like an 18-ounce cup. Alrighty then. Handy dandy assistant, could I get 3 minutes on the clock, please? All right, so black tea, we're going to brew it 3 minutes the first time using boiling water. It's going to be 4 minutes the second time, and it is going to be 5 minutes the third time. You still get a third time brew. Now, normally when you see us freeze dry fruit, you'll go ahead and you'll notice that we are going to brew extra that first minute. That's only when we do a white or a green tea, because it takes a minute for the freeze-dried fruits to rehydrate and then to brew into the tea. But when it's a black tea, since it's already going to be in there for 3 minutes, you do not have to do that. So, all right, tea then. Did you bring my other thing down?
No.
The creamer?
No, I didn't.
It's a black tea. It's the end of the day. I'm going to be adding a little bit of sugar to this, and I am going to add milk, but you could, you don't need any of it. It's just the end of the day, so it's going to be my treat for the day. All right, so let's talk about the Keemun. It definitely comes from China. Funny thing about the Keemun, a lot of it comes from traditionally the region between the Yellow River and the the Yellow Mountains and the Yangtze River in China. It was one of the blends that used to be a green tea, and now there are many varieties. But we like the Keemun. It adds like a smoky note to it without really being smoky, if that makes sense. Now, we're going to talk about McIntosh apples, and I talked about how they're heirlooms. They've been around since 1811. They're my favorite. They're my handy dandy assistant's favorite. But
I brought my cup for a second.
You brought your cup for a second brew.
Yes.
Did you see that? He's automatically thinking he's going to get some tea right away. I don't know. So another thing that's interesting about McIntosh apples, my husband was active duty military before he retired, and so we've lived in many, many different places, and we would always be on the lookout for McIntosh apples because, you know, like I said, that is an apple to my brain. That's the only taste of an apple. I'm not as partial to Granny Smiths. I'm not as partial to the Honeycrisp. I'm not as partial to the Fuji's. Fuji's are okay, but they're not my Max. They're not a Cortland. And the funny part is they were harder and harder to find. Now, the commissary, the grocery store on post or on a military installation, they carried them. They would get one batch, one batch. And that batch, you had to hit the commissary the day that batch entered. So you could go through and we would buy like 12 to 15 pounds of
Just transfer it on over to that mug.
just transfer it over to that mug right there. Okay. We would buy up to 15 pounds of these apples, and then make all our apple pies and freeze them and everything like that. Now, a lot of people don't like Max for apple pies because there's a ton of juice in them. They're extremely juicy, which of course I love. They're sweet with that tang, but they're also harder and harder to find. So we used to get them once, the commissary then stopped, and that used to be in many places. They became harder and harder to find. Other apples you can find anywhere, but McIntosh apples, you really have to go to like New England or an apple orchard that has McIntosh apples. They are, oh my goodness, I wish they were everywhere. But the reason is they've been declining recently. The past few years, they are growing fewer and fewer McIntosh apples intentionally. And the reason for this is those that mass produce the apples, so to speak, those who have the huge orchards are not growing McIntosh apples. They've been declining and growing fewer and fewer every year. And the reason for that is McIntosh apples have what is considered a very soft flesh. You know, I push even just regular finger strength. I'm going to put a divot in my apple. They're very easy to, they're very tender white flesh, and they're going to bruise easy, they're going to bang easy, and so for that reason, they are not growing them, and therefore they are not selling them like they used to. They're not as easy to transport as something like a Granny Smith that has a harder flesh on it that's going to survive that mass transport and that mass storage much better than our Macs do. And that's what we just call them. We call them the Macs, but that's one of the reasons they've actually been in decline. But this particular apple right here, this specific one, was picked yesterday. And I haven't been to New England since last year. We found a local farmer, Blue Stem Orchards, and they have a whole mess of varieties of apples growing. He is in his first year of commercial production. He bought a previous orchard that has been out of production or the trees haven't been producing for 31 years. And then 4 years ago, he started it back up, and we happened to stumble across it when we were at our market, and it was only 20 minutes away from where we were. It's probably, about 45 minutes to an hour from where we live. But we looked, and he actually had McIntosh apples. So we went to the trees, and we picked apples. Now, I have tried them. I actually made little apple pastries for a potluck that we went to today. And these are phenomenal. They're not as good as the New England Mac. It's just not quite as sweet. It's a little more on the tart size. But I was super excited. I will tell you that the Blue Stem Orchard does not have any more McIntosh apples that'll be ready anytime soon because my handy dandy and I picked them all. Every single one of them. Actually, if you'll put this in here and then put that in there. Okay,
Handy dandy assistant to the rescue.
Handy dandy assistant to the rescue. So he found this local orchard. I am super excited because these will be good for me. I'll go ahead and I'll make some pies and I will eat them. Because, an apple a day, what can you say? All right. I am going to add in just a little bit of sweetness. And
if you dip your finger in, it'll be sweet enough.
No, that's not how it works.
You are the sweet.
There we go. And I actually have a real teaspoon. It is smaller than a standard spoon. Were you looking for that? Okay. It's smaller than a standard spoon, and it is silver. A good friend of mine years ago found this in one of those tag sale, yard sale kind of indoor flea market places, and she found, I think there's 6. Just a little bit of milk, some sugar, my appealing tea. I'm a happy camper. And so she bought them and gave them to me as a gift. I love them. They are the perfect tiny little size. It's an actual teaspoon. It's smaller than our standard spoons that we get in the set of silverware, but it is really perfect for this. I don't use it to do the tea because I have this, but it is perfect for the sugar. So good. So lately I've been talking a lot about like pairing foods and different things like that. And I kind of talked about like where we got the ingredients for the appealing tea and why we like the blend and the simplicity of it and things like that. Well, what would you pair this with? Well, obviously this is the perfect complement to an apple pie. It's going to echo the same flavors of apple and cinnamon in the tea, but you're going to have enough of the tea flavor to really kind of have a nice balance. You could do this with like a roast pork if you were looking for a main dish. The richness of the pork is going to balance with the smokiness of the Keemun and some of the fruity notes that you'll find in a Keemun tea, as well as the fruity notes of the apple and the cinnamon to set it all off. I would say you could even do roast pork or a barbecue pork with this because if you get a vinegar-based barbecue sauce that is not overly sweet, this would also pair well, especially if it was smoked over like apple wood to kind of bring in a little bit more of that complex flavor. If you were going to have a snack, extra sharp cheddar cheese. Basically any cheese, but again, coming from New England and living really close to the Vermont border most of my life, I would say extra sharp cheddar cheese from Vermont is amazing. And I have converted many people over to my way of thinking across the years. they like literally don't understand. But you could just literally have this with some cheese and crackers. The sharpness of that and the creaminess of the tea matching with the cinnamon and the apple and the sweetness and then the smokiness of the tea. Excellent way to have some of the complementing flavors and contrasting flavors.
So
Snickerdoodles, yes, you could definitely do a snickerdoodle cookie. That would work with this 100%. I see Stephanie put her parents did cheese and apple. She never caught on to that. What I will tell you, Stephanie, is that is a very New England thing. It is not uncommon in New England, especially if you head a little farther north from where I lived in New England to like Maine, to have cheddar cheese and apple pie. Thanks, Handy Dandy Assistant. He put it in the chat right before I saw it pop up, right before I said it. But they won't put ice cream necessarily. I mean, they can, but they would, instead of using ice cream, for a apple pie a la mode, they would actually put that extra sharp cheddar cheese because the balance between the two is just, but you have to have that extra sharp white cheddar. Otherwise, it is not the same. I've tried it with the orange stuff that you can get in a lot of the stores and things like that. There is a specific kind of extra sharp white cheddar cheese, and when you try it and you balance the two, oh my goodness. So, yes, welcome. And so, again, like the snickerdoodle cookies, you could go with cinnamon rolls. This would be really, really good. Another way to do this would be like an orange cinnamon roll, adding a little bit of citrus in here to kind of play a little bit with it. All right, here's one that not a lot of people that I know eat or enjoy, but it would be delicious with this appealing tea, this fall tea, and that is a butternut squash soup. So butternut squash is not my favorite, but I have had butternut squash soup, and the earthy sweetness of the butternut squash mixed with the cinnamon that you're going to bring out in the tea, and then again the smoky flavor and fruity flavors of the Keemun and the apple would really, really balance well. I'm at the point in the day where I want to drink the tea, not necessarily talk about the tea, which is not always a good thing. Okay. Another thing you could do would be a caramelized onion tart, and especially the buttery crust is going to help with that savory sweet balanced. Spiced pumpkin bread is always a good, and you'll notice I'm saying a lot of fall flavors. This was a tea that we created. Appealing was created last year, and it was debuted at the Topeka Cider Days. That's the very first time. It became an immediate bestseller, and even though it's only available from September through the end of November, it was still one of our best sellers all last year. It outdid everything else, and you're going to notice that this pairs really, really well with a lot of fall flavors, and that's what we wanted to want. And when we think of fall, we think of apple picking. Yes, you think of a lot of pumpkin, but we think more apple. I prefer apple to pumpkin, sorry. But you could do this with a spicy or a spiced pumpkin bread. A sweet potato casserole would be another one. If you wanted to be fancy, like I know a couple of people here love to get fancy, you could go with a goat cheese crostini with a fig jam. Now, I will also say we will be in Cider Days in 2 weeks. It is the third weekend, and we will be in Topeka, so if you want to come by, and if you do go by, there is an amazing local vendor last year that we got some goat cheese from. It was amazing. And I would use that, make a goat cheese crostini. You're going to have the tangy creaminess of that goat cheese mixed against the sweetness of the tea. And then when you add that fig jam, it is going to just add some complexity that's going to kind of bring it all together in a way that's very surprising, but absolutely delicious.
I like butternut squash and pumpkin bread, and Stephanie loves fig jam, and they have it brie.
So see, fig jam and brie. You could go with the brie with this. I just love the goat cheese. Just has a little bit more of a bite than a brie would, but either is really, really good.
Goat's bite.
All right. I've got one more surprising thing that you could pair with this tea that's going to be really rich and indulgent for your taste buds. Anybody want to guess what it is?
Chocolate.
Anybody want to guess what it is?
Turnip.
It is not turnip. I promise you it's not turnip. My handy dandy assistant, turnip is actually one of the things that he doesn't eat, and there's only like 3 things in the world that he doesn't eat. Turnip's one of them, so I promise you it's not that. Put in the chat or the comments if you have any guesses what it is. Giving everybody a second. So one of the decadent things, I'm not seeing anything come up. Are you seeing anything come up? Like my comments will work, and then all of a sudden I'll see that like 15 people have commented, and so it's funny.
You may want to take a sip of tea just to let them know.
I'll take a sip of tea. Okay. One of the most unusual things to happen is I was enjoying some appealing tea, and I had a piece of dark chocolate, that deep, bitter notes of the dark chocolate, very, very high cacao rating on it. It absolutely contrasted with the sweetness of the apple within the tea. I hadn't even sweetened my tea that day. I didn't add the milk or the sugar in. I was just drinking that appealing straight, and a piece of chocolate, uh, unbelievable. The rich flavors, the profile of the tea, and the contrasting bitter notes of the chocolate. It was so amazing. It actually became part of the inspiration for later our mocha mint, which is the cacao and peppermint tea blend that we have closer to Christmas time.
So I guess cheesecake, and Stephanie said dark chocolate.
So Diane guessed cheesecake. That is a great guess. That was not it. I think that's because I got spoiled. We had a ladies' event, and someone used our onyx chai in a cheesecake, and I think I now just associate cheesecake with onyx chai, but it would absolutely work with this one as well. Absolutely. Dark chocolate, great guess, Stephanie. Great guess on that one. It is so rich. Like the depth and complexity of flavors on that one, unbelievable. All right, anybody have questions? Because nobody's put any questions in there that I heard being told. All of a sudden, like I said, I see comments stay static, and then all of a sudden, like 5 comments jump at the same time. Oh my gosh, the apple is so potent. Oh, that is so good. Okay, so when I think one of the reasons why this kind of tea for fall is very comforting, it's very soothing, it has a very fall palate for you. So anytime you're looking at fall flavors, you could do this. I wouldn't necessarily do this with like a fish or something on that idea. It's not going to have complementary contrast. The flavors are not going to be complementary enough for you. I would stick to like pork, a chicken with a barbecue sauce, the squash soups, the caramelized onions, pumpkin, definitely the chocolate, the crostini, anything on that idea, the other flavors that come out. But I was super excited to be able to go apple picking, something I haven't done in years. And then we have some apples. Like I said, if you want to go Blue Stem Orchards, it's in St. George, Kansas.
It's actually in Flushing.
It's actually in Flushing. Okay.
Exactly. Almost in the.
There's bitty towns in Kansas that like don't even exist on the maps. You'll be able to find St. George on the map, but like Blue Stem Orchard, you can go pick apples. Like I said, you can't pick any max because we got them all. There might be a couple we left on the tree that weren't quite ready to be picked, but that's about it. But it's a fun event. It was not expensive. They have started it up after the orchard being out of use and not used for 31 years, and they're bringing it back. So, yeah, it was great. We saw lots of different kinds of apples, and this is the season for apples. So anywhere from August to say the end of September, beginning of October, depending on the season, that is pretty much apple season in New England and here in Kansas.
I almost know if you tried apple crisp. Crisp apples. Honey-crisp apples.
Honey-crisp apples. Have I ever tried Honey-crisp apples? I have. They are too sweet for me. There's not enough apple flavor, too much of a sugar flavor, if that makes sense, for my personal palate. We didn't want it overly sweet, so we didn't use it in the tea. Our backup plan for the tea would have been like a Cortland, because we got some last year before we went to New England. We were using Cortlands that actually a neighbor, literally, what are they, a mile away, they just had this apple, and they were at the farmer's market with us, and it was perfect. And we're like, hey, wait, and he's really, really amazing about understanding varieties of fruits and stuff, but I like recognized it looked like an apple, a real apple, a normal apple to me. Like, again, I grew up with Max and with with Cortlands. And so, you know, they're very distinctive. They're red, but they have the green parts to them. And this is one variation of a traditional mac. This is not the official regular mac, but they would have huge green spots and the bright to dark red in them and everything like that. So he recognized that they were Cortlands, and we were like, okay, let's just buy like one or two, I think, and we tried them, and we're like, they are, because our neighbors, 10-7 Farms in Chapman, they did not know what kind of apple it was, but we recognized them as Cortlands, and then it was later confirmed from someone else it was Cortlands. So that's what we were able to use last year prior to going to New England and getting all those macs and freeze drying them. We found that that's just a better flavor profile. I'm one of those people, I want my apple to taste like an apple. I want my grape to taste like a grape. I know that my grandbabies love cotton candy grapes, but I don't want my grapes to taste like cotton candy. I actually grabbed a grape one time. I grabbed some grapes while they were here, and I didn't realize that they were cotton candy grapes, and so I popped one in my mouth, and I'm expecting it to taste like a grape, and it tasted like sugared cotton candy, and I was like, ick. Like, I like cotton candy on occasion, like a bite or two, but I don't want my grapes to taste like that. I want my apple to taste like an apple, you know, that sort of thing. So, other questions? Good question, though. That was a hard thing. We tried actually a few different varieties of apple in our appealing tea because we wanted to get that right mix. It's like finding the right cinnamon. We tried a bunch of Madagascar ones and different things like that. We really love the ones that came from Indonesia. They had the right cinnamon flavor for us. Any other questions? Okay. Next week is our big week for questions, so please get them into me or put them in the chat or be prepared to bring them with you next week. It is our big question and answer. The week after that, we might be coming to you. We'll be coming to you from packing up cider days, so it might be a slightly interesting live session. We should be back by then or packing up, but we'll still go live even if we're coming from cider days. So
Stephanie does not like either milk or white chocolate. They are too sweet. She gets it.
Yes, like some things are just too sweet. We like I like the semi-sweet chocolate sometimes. Like I like a semi-sweet chocolate in my chocolate chip cookies, but I prefer a dark chocolate if I was eating, which is why I was eating a dark chocolate when I was drinking my appealing tea, and I was like, oh, this is really good. So yes, traditionally, if we're taking a bite of chocolate, it's going to be a very high cacao percentage, and it's going to be that super dark chocolate to get the complexity of flavor. So awesome. All right. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. I will see you next week. We have lots of questions, and we will be doing another fall mocktail next week. I typically try and do a mocktail or a cold drink when we go ahead and we do our question and answer series, because there's not as much for me to prepare since I'm just answering your questions. And I know I've already received one question that we're going to talk about, and I might use that one as the basis for the mocktail that we make. So, if anybody else has any questions during the week, just reach out, let me know. If not, bring them, and I will see you all next Sunday at 6 Central. Thanks for joining.